Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. It's Elsek, and in this video we're gonna be talking about Base64. Base64 is one of the top abilities that every pen tester must have because it ensures the most stable way of transferring our payloads. We're gonna demonstrate how it works, of course, on both Windows and Linux environments, so without wasting any more time, let's just dive into it. Let's actually start with the very basic. Base64 is a way to encode data to a form that it's like more stable and is not containing any form of any Unicode or special characters. For example, if we want to encode a string, we can do it base64 and it's gonna get parsed more easily. Let's just demonstrate how it works and how you can create a base64 yourself. Let's open up a terminal, and Linux has its own ability of encoding with base64 and apparently decoding as well as PowerShell, but you can use as many resources as you want online. For example, let's say we have a string echo -n and test, and that command is gonna output test to our command line. If I type pipeline and type base64, it's gonna automatically into base64. Now there's an algorithm for doing that, and as you saw, we need to add a bunch of equal signs, and that's because a base64 payload needs to have a number of characters, which is like 2, 4, 6, and so on. That way, if the number of characters is different, then these equal signs are being added. And what I mean by that is by typing anything in your command line and pipelining to base64, you can encode pretty much anything. For example, I can go ahead and cat etc passwd, but if I do with pipeline base64, this is gonna get a huge bunch of string, which is our encoded form of etc passwd. And keep in mind that if you, for example, copy and paste it, there's a lot of new lines which can break up the terminal or the environment where you pasting that. So what I like doing is type -w 0, which is going to do all of this in one line. So that way it's more easy to copy and it's less likely to break your syntax. Now, for example, if I want to copy all that, Excel IB, and let's say we want to echo-n decode from base64, we can do quite the same thing, paste the base64, do a pipeline, and type base64-d. And as you can see, this is our decoded form of etc passwd. So why is this handy and why this is being needed is, as I said before, that way we can bypass mechanisms, security prevention mechanisms. We can make sure that our payload is being stable by base64 encoding it, and also we can genuinely run PowerShell commands without caring about the syntax. We're gonna show this in just a little bit. To demonstrate how that works, let's go ahead and log into our BeeBox, which I already showed you where to download it, but if you did not watch the video, go ahead and type BeeBox Hub, open up here, and this is the BeeBox. So BeeBox apparently is a vulnerable box having a lot of vulnerable applications, and on one of the applications, you can go ahead and play around with a lot of web vulnerabilities. And that application is called BeeUp. You can download it only that, but I strongly prefer downloading BeeBox because it has the ability of achieving remote code execution and it has additional vulnerabilities there. So default login is BeeBox. And as you can see from the menu, we have a lot of things to play around. And what I want to show now is that OS command injection. When we go to hack, we have some DNS lookup. When we do it, we automatically see that when we press the button, the NSA graph is being looked up. So most likely this thing is parsed to the operational system level and it's running some system commands, or it's using a PHP, which is running system command. So let's try to bypass it. Let's just do a ampersand and then type whatever command we want. And for that case, we can go, let's see tmux. And here I can type sudo tcp dump icmp. And I split the pane, get my IP address. So what I'm going to do now is type ping -c1, and keep in mind that -c1 is important because other way we would hang the application and we need to reboot the system. And if you are in a real project, that's going to be a pain. And if I type my IP, we can see that here we have an output of ping, and here we have again the output of ping in this speedup. So let's go ahead open burp now because it makes things a lot easier and do this with Base64. Now go to next, start burp, and turn the proxy on. Let's wait it to finish. And why I'm liking burp is because it makes things a lot easier. For example, we are limited from that space of the box and we can see our command that well. We can of course go to front end and change its look, but trust me, in burp it's way better. So our intercept is being turned on, lookup, send it to repeater, and let's see what's gonna happen. If I type lookup, we see that we have the content of the page and we have like 30,000 bytes as a response body. And where did my window go? Oh yeah, there it is. All right. Now if I type the same thing, and what was it? C1, then paste my IP address. All right, and make sure to URL encode this with Control U. Now click send. I'm not sure it happened. Something happened. Oh, that's why. Plus ping. All right. Actually, that's our sign. And then we go plus ping plus C1. We forgot the command itself. And yeah, now we have ping. And as you can see, we have 30,884 bytes. So using that bytes, we can see either our command was executed or not. Because if it's not executed, we put something else. Let's say we remove the ping, we have that 609 there. So ping plus minus C1, and we have changed in our bytes. Nice. So the next thing I want to do is to actually go ahead and do this with Base64. And what we're achieving here is, for example, we can go ahead and type ping C1, paste the IP address, which is going to do the same thing. And now what we want to do is to Base64 that. So this is going to be our payload, and I'm going to type Base64W0, and I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. So whenever I want to execute something in Base64 with Linux, this is done by typing echo-n, pasting the Base64 payload, decoding the Base64 payload, and piping it to bash. So that way, we have some syntax error. And this, guys, is a footage where I live debug what the hell is going on. And to save your time, I just decided to, make it quicker. And just here we are. Oh, we made a huge mistake there. We need to first do echo -n and then the payload. So ping C1, our IP address. All right, and now we do Base64, and now we do Excel IB. And if we want to execute that, we can do echo-n, paste the Base64 payload there, type Base64-D, and this is just the decoded payload. And then if I pipe it to bash, this is gonna get executed. So it's not the shell, but it's our mistake. So let's do it again here to see if it's working. So let's go ahead into echo-n, ping C1, our IP address, Base64, and then Excel IB. All right, and then echo-n, paste the Base64 payload, Base64 decoded, and pipe it over to bash. And again, ping is executing, which is nice. So in the previous turn, we just copied the output of the ping command, and that's why it did not work, but now it does. So we can copy that thing and inject it in our command injection vulnerability here. So we have the ampersand and then paste our command. and make sure to always URL encode the payload, because we just, and actually let's test it without URL encoding. And as you can see, nothing happened. 609. Now let's go ahead and URL encode our payload. Control U, paste it, and we have 884, and we have the ping again. So run, we have the ping again. So that's the way we can achieve command injection using Base64. And this is handy whenever we have some complex payloads, because now we are doing only ping, and of course we can go ahead and do it manually. But if we go ahead and we need to do something like bash reverse shell, actually let's go ahead and try that. Let's go ahead and search for bash reverse shell, find the payload, and bash TCP. All right, where was it? Bash TCP. Now copy that. Now let's test it locally. Of course, always test your payloads locally. ncmvop 443. And now let's paste the payload. So now let's edit the port 443 and edit the IP address 192.168.126.128. All right, this should do the work. No, it did not. So always it's a good idea to encapsulate it with bash-c, and this whole thing is going to be in quotes. And now it works. If I type ID, we're good to go. So let's go ahead here, and this whole string should get passed into our command injection vulnerability. So let's go ahead and start our listener again and copy the whole string. Not sure if it's gonna work, but let's just find out. All right, paste it here, URL encode it, and let's see what's gonna happen. Send, nothing. Huge nothing. Okay, so let's go ahead and type echo-n, paste the whole string there. It's getting parsed correctly, and now we go and Base64 that. And if we copy the Base64, echo-n, paste the Base64, Base64 decode, and type and pipe it to bash, this should work in theory. And it does. We can see we received the payload. So let's start our listener again. This is going to be our Base64 command injection payload. Copy it, go to burp, paste it here, and make sure to, of course, actually, I accidentally delete that character here, and make sure to actually URL encode the payload, submit, and still doesn't work. Maybe it's not using bash. Maybe. Let's try with netcat payload. So echo-n and see our IP address 28, our port, and let's see BeeBox. All right. And now Base64 it. Now echo-n Base64 payload, Base64 decode, and now pipe it to bash. And again, we receive the callback, so we know our payload is good and it's working. So let's copy it again and try to repeat the process. Let's go ahead here. Actually, yeah, this should work. Paste it, URL encode it, send, and we receive the callback. We have shell as data. That was a nice demo how you can utilize Base64 encode and decode. And there's another thing I want to show you guys, and it's inside burp. So if you go to burp decoder and paste a string, let's go ahead and paste only the Base64 part. And we can pretty much do the same with burp. So we can either decode and encode as any of these things. So for example, now I want to decode that string into from Base64. So decode as Base64, and now I want to encode that as a URL. So burp does this automatically with just the clicks, but I want to show you how to do it with the command line. Now we know how to generate Base64 and decode Base64. Now it's a good idea to show how this thing is done in Windows. So let's fire up our Windows environment and show you how it's done there. Alright guys, now I'm inside my command VM, we're in Windows, and I'm gonna demonstrate how to do exactly the same thing using PowerShell. And to be honest, doing this with PowerShell is way more important than with Linux and Bash, because PowerShell is like having a lot of syntax breakpoints possible. And for example, when you are debugging and gaining Windows shells, there's a good chance of you getting stuck with PowerShell syntax. And having the ability to execute Base64 is a huge deal because it bypasses this step. What I need to show you is that, for example, if I type write host and let's see ASD, it's gonna type DSD in the terminal. So I wanna, let's see, for example, save that into a variable. So text equals to write host and let's see test. So for example, when I run text, I have the text I saved there. So now what I want to do is to base64 that string and then run PowerShell with the base64 string. Now in PowerShell the syntax is heavier from Linux, but there's a lot of cheat sheets for that online and you do not have to remember this. So let's start by convert base6 to base64 string, and there's a good thing that we can help ourselves with type out complete. Then we have system dot text dot encoding. Then we need to pass unicode dot get bytes, and here need to pass the variable with it text. That way we're just gonna generate a base64 payload. And now the cool part about PowerShell is we can pass it using PowerShell-E, which means execute a base64 command. So for example, if I type PowerShell-E and paste the base64 there, I'm gonna see test on my window. So the whole command was write host test. We made it base64 using that command right here, and we passed it successfully using PowerShell-E and paste the base64 payload. So pretty much following that logic, we can pass any PowerShell command avoiding syntax errors, which is huge. And let's give it an example with any PowerShell reverse shell payload. So let's open up Firefox, and of course it should update now. Never mind, should be fast. And search for PowerShell reverse shell. Alright, and let's open up that. Let's see. Yeah, there's the one was string, it's paracat reverse shell. We do not want that. Let's go to here. Yeah, this is the one I was looking for. So as you can see, the payload itself is huge. And let's open up Notepad, paste the payload, and see that we have a lot of syntax there. We have a lot of breaks, a lot of brackets, a lot of semicolons, a lot of syntax there. So we have quotes and so on and so on and so on. So by having us the ability to modify the payload is going to be really hard, and a lot of mistakes can be made. I'm sure that this thing can work if we paste it directly. Let's try 190, 192, 168. Alright, import 443. Let's go ahead to BeeBox and go ahead and type ncmvrp 443, set up a listener, go to commando, copy the payload, and paste it in PowerShell. Let's see what's gonna happen. The prompt stopped, which most likely means that it was successful, and it is. But make sure that this way we can surely, yeah, we can run command, but imagine that this payload we need to inject in some kind of a web app. Imagine we have some web app that we found is vulnerable to remote code execution, and we need to pass that whole string. And the whole string we're passing is in quotes, and this is gonna make the things a lot harder. So the best thing is to actually do the same procedure and type text equals to the payload. and we need to, yeah, we broke the syntax as I mentioned. So let's try text equals like that. Come on. Does it require a new line? Not sure. All right, so if I type text, not sure what happened, but it's not good. So I'm just gonna clear that out. Copy the payload again. Type text equals, let's try, what was it? Like that maybe? If I type text. Yeah, all right. Now we copy the payload. Now what we can do is again run the same command for base64 encoding, and this is gonna get a bunch of base64 string. When we copy that string, I want to go ahead and type PowerShell -c or E, sorry, and paste that string in just a single quotes. Run that, and as you can see, the terminal hang up again, which pretty much means we were successful. The next thing I want to try is to actually go ahead and generate the payload from Linux using PowerShell core and try the payload on Windows. So let's go ahead and type Powsh. If you don't have Powsh, it's PowerShell for pretty much every operational system. They make it core independent, kernel independent. So if you want, you can install it on Linux and work with PowerShell on Linux, which is pretty nice. So let's go ahead and repeat the process. So I'm gonna go text equals, and actually I need to paste the payload there. So go to commando, notepad, copy the payload, curly box, and paste it here. All right, now let's go ahead and type the exact command we have there because I'm too lazy to type it again. Copy the command, go to curly, and paste the command. We have again base64 payload. Now let's go ahead, copy the payload, set up a listener in CMVOP 443, and go to commando and open up, let's see, CMD. Now type PowerShell E and paste the payload. And our application hangs again, which means that the payload is successful. So keep in mind, I need to make a note here that not every PowerShell payload you type and run in Base64 generated from Linux will work on Windows. So there's the differences when it comes to generating Base64 payloads. So always make sure when you're testing a Base64 payloads or PowerShell payloads, always make sure to test it on the same operational system. So for example, if I'm seeing Windows on the target side, it's better to shoot up commando and do the payloads from there, besides doing it Linux. In that case, it worked, but I personally been through cases where the Base64 payload generated from PowerShell on Linux do not work on Windows environment. So my advice is always test your payload in the same operational system as your target. Another thing I want to mention is that how you can actually go ahead and work with Base64 payloads online. And if you simply Google Base64 Decode, there are a bunch of websites that can do this for you. So if you're not able to do it on Bash or PowerShell, or you find that way being easier, it's always a good idea to just go ahead, navigate to that URL, paste your Base64 payload, and it's just gonna get decoded for you or encoded depending on your needs. So for example, if you agree with the cookies, of course, let's go ahead and copy our payload again. Navigate to the Firefox, paste it here, type decode. We can see that it's not decoded as it should. So as I was mentioning before, actually let's go to ASCII. Yeah, like I was mentioning before, decoding PowerShell payloads from and on Base64, it's always better to be done from the PowerShell because as you can see now, from the web, we were not able to decode that string as well. We just see some gibberish text there. Maybe there's a way, but as you can see, the process is more complex and better avoid using that. As I said before, if you have payload on Linux, test on Linux. If you need to debug, create, and test and run payload on Windows, go ahead, shoot up your commando and do it on Windows. Because as you can see, the payload was 100% understood from the Windows environment and was executed successfully. That was the video, guys. Thank you all for watching. And if you enjoy the content and learn something new, make sure to like, comment or share the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any ideas about topics that can be interesting for you, pop them into comments and I'm gonna make a video about it. Thank you guys for watching, hope you learned something new and see you in the next one.